Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Kuf Lamed Zayin, Amud Aleph, 2 lines from the bottom, the final Mishnah in the Perek. Our Mishnah discusses the essential components for fulfilling the mitzvah of Bris Milah. Says the Mishnah, Eilu hein tzitzin hama'akfin es hamila. The following are the tzitzin, the pieces of skin that are left over after cutting the orla, that will be ma'akev the mitzvah of Bris Milah. Basar ha'choifes roiv ha'atar. If there's basar from that orla that covers the majority of the atar, that will me'akev es hamila. What is that atar referring to? That is the indented line that encircles the roish of the aver. So if there is on the circumference a roiv of the orla, that will ma'akev the mitzvah of Bris Milah. And therefore he's an oral gomor, whereby if he's a kohen he cannot then eat truma. If the child is a fat child, fleshy child, and therefore even after doing a complete bris milah, still the skin appears to cover the roish, the atara, then mesakne mivnei maris ha'ayin, we fix it up. The moyel fixes it up by cutting off some of that skin, so that it should not give the appearance as if a bris milah was not performed. The Mishnah goes on to say on top of Kuf Lamed Zayin Amud Beis, Mol v'loy pares hamila. If he did the first part that we just described of taking away the orla, that's called being mal, but he did not do the priya. Priya is the second component that is required in the bris milah, and that is that after the orla is removed, there's a thin membrane that still covers the roish of the aver, whereby it has to be cut and then pulled back, so that the roish is then revealed. Then it's ki'ilu loy mal. If he does not do priya together with the milah, then it's ma'akev, as if he didn't have a bris milah, and therefore he's still an oral gomor. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Avino, Amar Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba, Amar Rav, in the name of Rav, Basar ha'choifes roiv goiva shel atara. In addition to what we just mentioned in the Mishnah, that if the roiv of the circumference is covered by orla, then it's ma'akev es hamila. Says Rav, in addition to that, if the majority of the goiva, that means of the roish itself, is going to be covered by the orla, even if only a miut of the circumference is covered, then that will also ma'akev the milah. Omar Shmuel says the following: Katan hamesur bal bebasar roin oisoi. If a katan has a lot of thickness of the skin, then we look at the child, and we determine the following: Kozma shemiskashe v'nire mohul eino tzarich lamul. If he had the bris milah, and although the flesh is indeed thick, but if he has a kishui, and it appears that he had therefore a bris milah after the kishui, then he doesn't have to then have any further thing done. The imlav, however, if not, even after a kishui, there still is skin that seems to be covering up that area, then tzarich lamul, then he has to then remove that skin. B'masni satano, it was taught in the following brayso, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel oimer, katan hamesur bal bebasar roin oisoi. If a child, again, has thickness of skin that seems to appear to cover that area, so roin oisoi, we examine, we look at the child after his bris milah. Koz mashem iskashe ve'eino nire mohul tzarich lamulo. If he has a kishui and still it doesn't appear that the orla was removed, then we must then remove further the skin. V'im lav, and if not, eino tzarich lamulo, then we don't have to then do anything further. Ask the Gemara, this sounds very similar to what Shmuel had said. My beinai, what is the difference between what Shmuel had said and what Rabbi Shimon Gamliel is teaching us? Answers the Gemara, Ika benaihu, nira ve'eino nira, if it appears slightly but not completely. In other words, according to the statement of Shmuel, Shmuel said if it was after a kishui nira mohul, then ein tzarich lamul. The deal would be that it was nira ve'eino nira. If it was appearing slightly, then indeed you would have to then do something further. Whereas Rav Gamliel said that if it does not appear after a kishui that he had a mila done, then we'd have to then do something further and remove the rest of the skin. However, the diuk would be if it was nira ve'eno nira, if it was partially seen, then according to Rav Gamliel, then he would not have to do anything further. And that would be the difference between the two statements that we have between Shmuel and Rav Gamliel. The Gemara now quotes the Mishnah Mal v'loy pora. If we said he did the first part by removing the thick skin, the arla, but he did not do priya, by removing by revealing the rosh of the aver, by peeling back the membrane, the thin membrane, that it's ma'akev. Now the Gemara explains to us the various brachos that are stated, that are recited at the time of the milah. Ton Rabbanan, the Gemara brings a brayso. Hamal oimer, the one who's doing the bris milah, the moyel, he says the following: Asher kidishonu b'mitzvah lahachniso Asher kidishonu b'mitzvah al hamilah. He makes a bracha birkas hamitzvah on the milah. Avi ben oimer, Asher kidishonu b'mitzvah lahachniso b'vriso shel Avram Avinu. The father of the child makes a bracha of lahachniso, entering the child into the covenant of Avram Avinu. Ha'oimdim, those who are standing, are present at the bris milah. Oimrim, they say, Keshem shenichnas labris, ken yikanes l'torah, l'chuppah, l'maisim toivim. Here, we can medayek that it says, V'ha'oimdim, those who are standing there, not just they are present, but they're standing there, because there's a requirement to stand while the bris milah is being performed. So they say this bracha of Keshem shenichnas labris, just as the child has entered the covenant of bris milah, so too kach yikanes l'torah l'chuppah l'maisim toivim. V'amevarech oimer, and now a person who makes a bracha on the kois, he makes the following bracha: Asher kidash yedid mi beten, the one who sanctified Yedid, referring to Yitzchak Avinu, who's called Yedid, from the beten. He was told, Avram Avinu was told even a year before the birth of Yitzchak that he's going to have a child, Yitzchak, and he has a requirement to mal him. Choik b'shi'erot sham, he will put a decree, a choik, in his skin. That means in the flesh itself, referring to the bris milah. V'tze'etzov chasam bris ba'ois bris kodesh, and his offspring will have then the chesima of the bris kodesh, the sign of the bris kodesh on his own body. Al kain b'schar zois kel chai chelkeinu. Therefore, in the reward, Hashem, who is the living Hashem, who is our portion, he commanded to save the child making a bris milah to mishachas, from referring to Gehinnom, leman briso shel asher som bivsarenu, that he commanded to make a bris in our skin. Baruch atah Hashem kares habris, blessed Hashem who performs the bris, who makes a bris, a lasting covenant with Klal Yisrael. Hamal es hagerim, when a person is mal the gerim, that means somebody who's now coming onto the covenant, and one of the requirements, in addition to them be toivel in the mikvah, big makabel, the mitzvahs, he has to have a bris milah. So one who's mal es hagerim oimer boruch ato Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam asher kidishon v'mitzvosov v'tzivonu al hamilah. He makes a bracha of al hamilah. V'amevarech oimer asher kidishonu b'mitzvosov lo mules hagerim. Here referring to the bezdin. The av bezdin will make a bracha la mules hagerim ulahativ mehem dam bris, and to draw blood for the covenant, the dam of the covenant, of the bris. Shilmole dam bris lo niskaimu shamayim va'aretz. Without the dam bris, then the shamayim va'aretz would not have kiyum. As it brings in the pasuk shenemar, im loy brisi shah yomam v'layla chuka shamayim va'aretz lo samti. If not for the bris here, referring to the bris milah, then the shamayim, the aretz, would not last. That means the bris that is during the day and the night on the child, in this case on the ger, even if he's an adult, that will give kiyum to shamayim va'aretz. Baruch atah Hashem kares habris. Hamales ha'avodim, one who has an eved knani is obligated to mal the eved knani, as we learned. Oymer, he says, Asher kidishanu b'mitzvosov mitzivonu al hamila. The Moel will say this bracha of al hamila. V'amevarech, referring to the adon of the eved knani. Oymer, he says, Asher kidishanu b'mitzvosov mitzivonu lamul es ha'avodim ulahativ mehem dam bris. She'ilmolei dam bris chuko shamayim v'aretz lo skaimu sheneemar im lo brisi yoymam v'layla chuko shamayim v'aretz lo samti. Baruch atah Hashem kares habris. Hadran Aloch Rabbi Eliezer de Mila. The 20th parak begins with speaking about where we have a distinction between Shabbos and Yom Tif. Although on Yom Tif all of the malachos apply that we have on Shabbos, there's an exception. Oichel nefesh, that which is required for the preparation of food, is permitted to be done on Shabbos. Says the Mishnah, Rabbi Eliezer Oimer. Rabbi Eliezer says, Toilin es hamishameres b'yamtif. He says you can go ahead and hang, meaning you can prepare a strainer on yamtif. Now the strainer, by preparing that, was taking a cloth and putting it over a kli, and that would be doime to then making an oil arai. An oil keva is a malacha of boine. An oil arai, which normally would require just, let's say, a classical case would be when a person has, let's say, 4 poles that are into the ground and he then puts a canopy over it just to get some shade from the sun. That would be an oil arai. And that's also midrabanan. So too over here, when he then puts the cloth, the strainer, he prepares it by putting the cloth around a kli. That itself is now making an oil arai. It's doime at least to an oil arai. And yet Rabbi Eliezer says one can do that on Yontif. Why? Because not only is oichel nefesh permitted according to Rabbi Eliezer, but even the machshire oichel nefesh, in this case preparing a strainer, would also be permissible. V'noisnin litluya b'Shabbos. And he says, although you cannot then go ahead and be toilet mishameres on Shabbos, but you could go ahead and pour the wine in the strainer even on Shabbos, because he holds over here that this is not the derech of breira, it's not considered to be borer, and therefore he says it's mutter lechatchila. The Mefarshim want to explain what is the reason why it's not considered derech breira, and some explain because it's not done biyadayim. Here it's by pouring onto a kli, in this case onto a strainer, onto the cloth, and then there's some breira that's done that's not considered to be an iser according to Rabbi Eliezer. V'chachamim oimrim ein toilin es hamishameres b'yamtif. They argue and say you cannot go ahead and prepare a strainer on yamtif because they hold that only oichel nefesh, like being shoichet an animal, or cooking, is going to be permissible on yamtif, but one cannot then prepare, in this case machshir oichel nefesh, a strainer on yamtif. Ve'ein noistin litzluya b'Shabbos, and one would not be able to then, even if had a strainer prepared before Shabbos, would not be able to then pour the wine on a strainer that was prepared before Shabbos on Shabbos, because it would consider to be breira, boirer on Shabbos, and that would be aser according to the Chachamim. However, the diuk would be that they would permit one to pour wine on yantif on a strainer, because again, that would be considered to be oichel nefesh, and that would be permissible. Aval noisnin litluya bit yantif, and the Mishnah says it befavorish, but one could pour water on the strainer on yantif, even according to the Chachamim, again, because it's mutter, because of oichel nefesh. Says the Gemara, Hashto Rabbi Eliezer, asoife oil arai loy masfinon. Now that Rabbi Eliezer says you can't even be moisif on an oil arai. We mentioned before that an oil keva is also midiyaraisa. It's a malacha of boinen. An oil arai is also midirabanon. Being moisif on an oil arai is a machlokes, and Rabbi Eliezer holds that it's considered to be part and parcel of the isur dirabana of making an oil arai, and therefore one cannot be moisif onto an oil keva. So the Gemara says that Rabbi Eliezer, who holds that you can't be moisif on an oil arai, l'me'ave lechatchila shari. If you can't even be moisif, then he said, then can you even make an oil arai to begin with? Certainly you can't. So why would we think that Rabbi Eliezer would be able to say permitting an oil arai over here? He says you can't even make a hasaf on an oil arai. So certainly you can't permit lechatchila making an oil arai. Answers the Gemara. First the Gemara wants to explain, where do we know that Rabbi Eliezer says that you can't be moisif on an oil arai? Maihi. The Gemara now brings a Mishnah we learned earlier on Daf Kuf Chaf Hey Amud Beis. The Mishnah said as follows: Pekak hachaloin. If you have that which is closing a window, to close up the window, so there's a machlokes. If you want to make a shutter to close up the window, Rabbi Eliezer oimer bisman shekosher v'tolui poking boy v'im lav ein poking boy. If that shutter is both tied and hanging, then we say it's part of the window itself, and therefore it's used to put on and off, whereby it's not a problem of an oil arai, of being moist of an oil arai. However, if it's missing one of these components, then either it's not kosher or it's kosher, but it's not tolui, according to Rabbi Eliezer, is being moistif on al arai. According to Chachamim, that you could do so. It's not considered to be a problem. Even in Isser D'Rabbanan, it's not. To explain, Hakol moidim, everybody agrees. She'ein oisin oil arai b'tchila b'yomtiv ve'in tzarich lom v'shabbos. Everybody agrees, even the Chachamim, that you cannot make an oil arai not only on Yontiv, but even not only on Shabbos, but even on Yontiv you couldn't make it. Lo nechleku ela lo hoisif. Their machlok is whether you can be moisif or not. Rabbi Eliezer oimer ein moisifin b'yontiv ve'in tzarich lom v'shabbos. He says you cannot even be moisif, not only on Shabbos, but even on Yontiv, you can't be moisif, because being moisif is included in the gezerah of making oil arai. Whereas the Chacham said you could be moisif on Shabbos and certainly on Yontiv. So we see clearly from the Mishnah that Rabbi Eliezer says you can't even be moisif. So if you can't be moisif, then certainly you can't make an oil arai to begin with. Answers the Gemara, Rabbi Eliezer sover like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Eliezer holds like Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya ein bein Yom Tov l'Shabbos elo oichel nefesh bilvad. The Mishnah says, the Brisa says you can't. There's no distinction between Shabbos and Yom Tov except for the malach of oichel nefesh, preparing for food. That's how the Tanna Kama learns. Rabbi Yehuda matir af machshirei oichel nefesh. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda is matir even the machshirei oichel nefesh, and therefore over here it's not a problem. Ask the Gemara, Eimer de Shaminon lo Rabbi Yehuda machshirin she'ef shalasois me'ev yomtiv. When did Rabbi Yehuda say it's mutter to do machshira oichel nefesh? That's when you could not do it before yomtiv. B'machshirin she'ef shalasois me'ev yomtiv mishamis lei. But that which you could have done before yomtiv, where do we hear that Rabbi Yehuda said that would be mutter? And therefore, if Rabbi Eliezer holds like the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, so therefore this would not be permissible, because presumably you can make the strainer before Yom Tiv. Answers the Gemara, Rabbi Eliezer adifa mid Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Eliezer is even more makil than Rabbi Yehuda. He says you can even do machshirei oichel nefesh that could have be done even before Yom Tiv. You can do that even on Yom Tiv.